Have you ever wondered what you're truly capable of? What extreme lengths you would go to just to survive? Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible and harrowing survival stories ever told. The story of Aaron Woolston, a man who found himself trapped between a rock and a hard place. Literally, it was a beautiful spring day in April 2003. Aaron, an experienced outdoorsman and avid mountaineer, set off for a solo adventure in Blue John Canyon, a remote and rugged part of Utah's Canyonlands National Park. He was in his element, hiking, climbing, and soaking in the breathtaking scenery. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going. Why would he? It was just another routine trip for a guy who felt more at home in the wild than anywhere else. This one decision, this small oversight, would soon have life-altering consequences. As he was navigating a narrow slot canyon, a seemingly stable boulder, weighing an estimated 800 pounds, shifted under his feet. In a terrifying split second, the boulder dislodged, pinning his right hand and forearm against the solid canyon wall. He was trapped, utterly and completely trapped. The initial shock and adrenaline gave way to a chilling realization of his predicament. He was miles from his truck, in a canyon so remote that another person passing by was a near impossibility. He screamed for help until his throat was raw, but his cries just echoed off the canyon walls, swallowed by the immense, silent desert. No one could hear him. No one was coming. Aaron had a limited supply of resources, Tigritos, less than a liter of water, a cheap multi-tool that wasn't much better than a toy, his climbing gear, and a video camera. The first day was a blur of frantic attempts to free himself. He pushed, he pulled, he tried to chip away at the massive boulder with his dull multi-tool. But it was like trying to carve a mountain with a toothpick. The rock wouldn't budge, not even a millimeter. As day turned into night, the desert's warmth vanished, replaced by a bone-chilling cold. Aaron shivered, not just from the temperature drop, but from the dawning horror of his situation. Sleep was nearly impossible, contorted in an awkward position, his crushed hand throbbing with excruciating pain. Data brought more of the same. He continued to work on the rock, a futile, exhausting effort. He began to carefully ration his water, taking only tiny sips. He knew that dehydration was his most immediate enemy. The sun beat down on him, and the canyon walls seemed to close in. To keep his spirits up and to document what he believed would be his final days, he started recording video messages on his camera. He spoke to his family, his friends, saying his goodbyes, apologizing for the mistakes he'd made in his life. These recordings were both a last will and a way to maintain some semblance of sanity. By day 3, the pain was immense, and his hope was dwindling. He was out of water. Desperate, he resorted to drinking his own urine to stay hydrated. The thought of amputation had crossed his mind early on, but he dismissed it as insane. How could he possibly cut through his own arm? But now, as delirium from dehydration and sleep deprivation began to set in, the insane started to look like the only option. He tried to use a small, dull blade on his multi-tool to saw into his skin. But it was too blunt to even break the surface. The reality was grim. He couldn't even cut his skin, let alone the bone. Day 4 was a descent into a waking nightmare. Hallucinations began to plague him. He saw visions of his friends, of his family, of a future he was certain he would never have. He saw a vision of a young boy, his future son, and this vision gave him a flicker of an idea, a sliver of hope. It was a premonition that he had to survive, that he had a life to live. He had to get out. By the morning of the 5th day, Aaron had a grim but clear-headed epiphany. He realized he could use the torque from his body to snap the two bones in his forearm, the radius and the ulnar. It was a horrifying, gut-wrenching plan, but it was a plan. Summoning every last ounce of strength and willpower, he deliberately and violently bent his arm against the trapped boulder until he heard a sickening crack, and then another. The bones were broken. The pain was beyond anything imaginable. But he wasn't free yet. Now came the most gruesome part of his escape. With the bones broken, he used the small, twinge blade of his cheap multi-tool to slowly, methodically saw through the muscle, nerves and tendons of his forearm. The process took over an hour. An agonizing hour of unimaginable pain and determination. Finally, with one last monumental effort, he tore himself free. But his ordeal wasn't over. He was free from the rock, but he was severely injured, bleeding, and had a 65-foot cliff to rappel down before he could even begin the 7-mile hike back to his truck. Running on pure adrenaline, he rigged his climbing gear with one hand and rappelled down the sheer rock face. He then began the long, staggering walk out of the canyon. Miraculously, after hiking for 7 whole miles under the brutal desert sun, he stumbled upon a family from the Netherlands who were hiking in the area. They gave him water and helped him until a search and rescue helicopter, which had finally been dispatched after his friends and family reported him missing, located and airlifted him to a hospital. He had been trapped for 127 hours. 5 days and 7 hours. Aaron Ralston had done the unthinkable to survive.